going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about the new iteration of the Frostbite engine, which for those of you who don't know, that is the engine that DICE used to create Battlefield among other games across other dev teams, and we're going to be talking about what changes have been made in order to take Battlefield to that next level. Now, the Frostbite engine has definitely been one of the more powerful engines in all of gaming over the last probably 10 years or so. It's the reason that Battlefield is able to have the awesome destruction that it has and the scale of the maps and all that kind of stuff. It's so powerful that it just allows DICE to do stuff that other engines just can't seem to handle. However, in saying that, it definitely has its downsides as well. One of the recurring themes across many Battlefield games as well as other Frostbite games, most notably Battlefront 2 in recent years, is that often these games are incredibly buggy and inconsistent with how certain things work. Even going back to Battlefield 4, that game was actually quite a mess when it launched, honestly, and although they were luckily able to turn it around and that game ended up being one of the best shooters ever made, it did still cause many problems, and the same can be said for most of those other games that I mentioned. Having worked closely with Battlefront 2 in terms of content creation and getting to know a lot of the developers, they not only mentioned that it can have these issues, but that it is also very hard to work with apparently, and that the people who originally coded the engine no longer work there as it is fairly old at this point, and therefore apparently it is incredibly hard for them to learn about the engine as it's a lot more intricate than many other engines out there. I'm not sure exactly how true that is necessarily, but that is what I've been told, at least during the days of Battlefront 2 anyway. Now, at the early reveal event for Battlefield 2042, we were able to ask the devs some questions towards the end of the stream, and one of the questions that came up from someone else in the chat was, with Battlefield 2042 being driven by Frostbite tech, how much has changed to both accommodate 128 players and things like the dynamic weather system? Oscar Gabrielson, who is the GM at DICE, went on to say that unfortunately, due to the fact that game developers have to wait so long between generations and upgrades of hardware in the gaming industry, it's not very often that they actually get to completely upgrade their tools or engines, simply because if they push things too far on consoles like the PS4 or Xbox One, for example, they won't really be reaching their potential, since there's generally always better tech and hardware out there, so they can only really upgrade the engine and stuff like that every so often when new consoles actually release. The older consoles obviously just have limitations that don't allow certain stuff. For example, the tornado that'll be showing up in Battlefield 2042 just wouldn't be very realistic if they tried to make it years ago. However, now that their tech is much more powerful, those sorts of things are just much more realistic and plausible. Now anyway, he continued on by saying that because the next gen consoles are here, and then obviously PC components have seen some huge upgrades recently as well, with stuff like the RTX 3090 from Nvidia for example, that they are finally able to do some much more exciting things, and that the Frostbite engine has actually seen quite a large jump from the last time they started developing a Battlefield game in Battlefield 5, so they are really excited about that, and as I said, it allows them to really push the boundaries of what they can and can't do. Oscar mentioned that EA Gothenburg are apparently the ones who have been mostly working on this new iteration of the Frostbite engine over the last 3 or 4 years now, and this is just my own speculation here, but the new version of Frostbite engine might actually be much easier to work with than previous versions if what I said earlier is true about the engine just being really hard to work with. So if Gothenburg have sort of rebooted the engine, for lack of a better word, which again is not at all confirmed, then hopefully that could mean that it's easier to work with and therefore much less buggy and inconsistent. This new version is likely called Frostbite 4, since the current, or I guess now the previous version, was called Frostbite 3, and so hopefully, like I said, this new iteration of the engine is much smoother and easier for DICE to work with, because if they can get the fundamentals of the game sorted and it launches with next to no bugs, that'd be enormous for the game, and it would also allow them much more freedom to work on other quality of life changes after launch, rather than being sort of behind the curve from the get-go like many other games often do. Now, not only does a new iteration allow for hopefully less bugs, but it does obviously allow them to just push the game even further and give us content that we've never really seen before in Battlefield, such as the 128 player lobbies and the sheer size of the maps, and then especially stuff like the tornado, the sandstorm on Hourglass, and whatever other Levolution events they have hidden away for us as well. This game is going to be designed on a scale that we just likely have never seen before. I know we can get some idea of it from the trailers and everything that we've seen and heard so far, but I definitely think once we actually get our hands on the game, it's going to be even more insane than we probably realized, because if the trailers looked impressive and they really only show a few things off, then there's definitely just a lot of stuff that we haven't seen yet, and knowing DICE, they 100% have plenty of stuff that they're keeping a secret from us to save for a little bit closer to launch, so I cannot wait to see more, hopefully some of that coming at EA Play later this month. But anyway guys, that is going to do it for this one. It was fairly short, I know, but we don't really have too much information on it just yet, and since I haven't really seen many other people talking about it, I thought it was definitely a pretty interesting topic to cover. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new, then consider subscribing to the channel with those notifications on. Thank you all very much for watching. watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.